Okay, recording has started. Interesting. Okay, so this is the start of the Loon planning session. This release is targeted for September. So from a logistics standpoint, please mute your line. This call is being recorded. Agenda, we'll go through the goals of the planning session, the roadmap, the schedule, and go through the slides. So the format of this planning session is different from previous ones in that we are going to go through the Kingfisher deliverables. So what we want to do is highlight the accomplishments of the previous release before we start looking at what we're going to try to do in terms of planning for the next session. So this way it calls out, okay, what was previously done and what are we targeting as we move forward into the next 3 months. Okay, in terms of goals, we want to review the Kingfisher deliverables, and we want to make sure we understand the plans for L&M releases. We try to see a couple releases forward to make sure we have a handle on where things are at. Oh, interesting. Make sure that people with shared interests are connecting, making sure we understand the dependencies, integration load. Okay, so from a roadmap perspective, we're in Loon. The focus of this release is around platform hardening. And then from a feature standpoint, what you'll see is a fairly prioritized list of features. I think excluding QA, of course, because we know QA is very important. As we look at features, dynamic configuration is kind of the top of the list. We want to make sure that we get transactions optimizations and configuration synchronization. So as you look at dynamic configuration, it's about making sure that we understand, okay, usually with Yang, you have the config state and the operational state. The configuration synchronizer is intended to make sure that the operational state matches the configuration state. And then another critical part that we want to make sure gets in is code base disaggregation. This will make sure that various applications are able to work independently so that they're disaggregated from the main portion of the code base. This, of course, will allow us to eventually get more independence in terms of the applications. And then gRPC, the focus is going to be making sure the core systems have gRPC northbound interfaces. With intent, there's some integration of domain. Things we're looking forward to is transactions, resource, bandwidth reservation, and making sure that the resources are reserved. And then virtualization. So a couple of functionality that was targeted for Kingfisher were delayed external connectivity and OF agent, which allows external SDN controllers to be able to work with this controller or devices via the OF agent. And then OpenStack integration is new functionality that is being introduced in this release. GUI, source framework enhancements. A lot of the focus here is going to be around hardening the code base, adding unit testing, additional testing, making sure that we're starting to put APIs in place to do additional overlays so that we can better support demos. QA, debug network partition tests, refactor packet optical tests, resource manager tests, and new SSU tests. Part of that has to do with in incubation, we're looking at adding a pretty critical feature called in-service software upgrade. Part of this will be looking at cryo-serialization and portable cryo-serialization so that we can have different versions of the firmware running or software running on each of the instances as we go through and roll the various members of the cluster. And then an upgrade coordinator to coordinate the whole upgrade process. In terms of P4, we're starting up a P4 brigade, which will be focused on adding P4 runtime. And then we're also looking at GNMI to provide device configuration via OpenConfig. As we look at M, there will be platform enhancements. Here we're looking at additional functionality to dynamic config, such as sharding of subtrees, focusing on performance improvements. We expect to be able to have a, released version of ISSU focused around the functionality we had noted before, as well as released functionality for P4, GNMI, with gRPC being able to expand that to additional northbound interfaces. Virtualization, be able to extend that to support snapshotting and embedding, to be able to, essentially automate being able to push down that virtualized network. And then GUI Topo 2 overlay migration and additional QA functionality. Loon schedule, I realized I had previously misspoken. Loon is really the August release. This is what happens when you do core down and ONOS. So with Loon sprints, we're targeting 4 sprints. The first sprint will start next Monday on June 5th. It'll be a 3-week sprint. The sprint after will start on June 26th and will be a 4-week sprint. The one after will be July 24th. That'll be 3 weeks, focused on feature freeze and making sure that we're integration complete. And then the final sprint will be a little over 2 weeks, making sure that we harden the functionality that we've introduced in Loon. Okay, new brigades. So a couple new brigades that we're starting up, P4, that has been started up by Carmelo, and then ISSU. For the ISSU, we're pending figuring out what help will be needed there. I think a lot of the focus will be some initial kind of proof of concept work to make sure that cryoserialization will work as expected. And then let's get started on the rest of the functionality in brigades. So we'll start with the brigades, highlight the accomplishments that were done in Kingfisher, and then go through kind of the plans for the upcoming release. Please call out any dependencies you have in terms of either review, integration, or other brigades. Deployment. I think Lucas said that he may not be able to make this. So do we have Yi? Online? Okay, we'll cover it real quick. So the deployment brigade has been focused on VPLS refactoring, and as part of the work that they've been doing, there was a lot of requirements on intent. So there have been some improvements in the intent framework and southbound to support that, as well as getting intent and VPLS working with OFDPA. In terms of upcoming releases, the focus would be supporting the Comcast deployment, additional VPLS focused around kind of bandwidth allocation and enforcement, integration of VPLS and bandwidth on demand, and set of tests for Giant to move to production. And then proposed M deliverables, I think, depends on where things are at with Loon. And a key thing to point out here is that the deployment brigade is interested in better understanding deployments and helping that. And so for folks that are involved in operations, if you're interested in help in terms of deployments, please reach out to this brigade so that they can be sure to better understand those use cases. And then network virtualization. Yoonseon?
The current status of the virtualization brigade. So the goal of our brigade is to provide the creation and management of SDN-capable virtual network on top of the ONOS platform. So we will support fully virtualized virtual network in terms of resource and control policies and topologies. And for this Kingfisher deliverables, we complete to implement flow objective service and master service, new service interfaces for virtual network management. And also we develop distributed store for packet, flow rule, and flow objective. So it means that we like to enable distributed environment. And also we define the OpenFlow agent, which OpenFlow is a application to connect to allow external controllers of tenants so through this web agent, or every tenant can connect their own external controllers to control virtual network. And also we did some refactoring effort on legacy code. For next slide, please. Hello? Yeah, for all deliverables, so I'm sorry about that. We have a little bit delayed on our planning. So actually in this Kingfisher sprint, we should provide two features. The first one is OpenFlow agent, and the second one is external connectivity to allow virtual network can connect with external networks such as the internet. But this is a little bit, these plannings are a little bit delayed, so we expect in require 1 or 2 sprints more. So for that, our goal to be achieved in Loon release, we will support those 2 delayed features, and also we plan to supporting OpenStack integration in this release. As a release plannings, we will plan to support virtual network snapshotting and embedding, and we consider supporting additional southbound interfaces for virtual network. And also we support the resilience features of the virtual network. Okay, and we have one announcement. Now we recruit more virtualization brigade members. So if you have a concern about virtual network virtualization and ONOS, we always welcome to contact through the mail brigade virtualization at onosproject.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoonseon. So we're on to dynamic configuration. Thomas, are you representing this?
Sure, I can certainly do that. So for Kingfisher, the functionality that was provided was the dynamic, basically prototype of the dynamic configuration store was implemented, but I would say that it's actually not production quality at this point in time yet, but it was certainly sufficient to demonstrate functionality at ONS and beyond. The Yang model, Yang tools 2.0 were released as part of the Kingfisher release, which includes basically new generation of the Yang tools, which were re-architected in order to achieve ONOS independence for both the Yang tool repository itself as well as for the artifacts generated by the Yang tools. And we were able to compile both L3 VPN models as well as OpenConfig models with slight changes to the OpenConfig model because there was a non-compliant clause in OpenRODEM modem. Sorry, did I say OpenConfig? I meant OpenRODEM. Also, we've implemented RESTConf and NetConf adapters for, well, RESTConf for northbound and NetConf for southbound. But again, these are probably of only prototype quality because they handle primarily just downward southbound direction. They don't currently handle northbound direction yet. And this was all integrated together for demonstrations. So I would say that the biggest progress for Kingfisher is to have a set of robust Yang tools and Yang runtime. So if you can take the next slide, please. So for the Loon, the focus is to, again, it's going to be two-pronged. It's going to continue to enhance the Yang tools, specifically to be able to complete the live compiler capability, which was started but not fully tested yet. This is capability that will give us ability to compile models after obtaining the Yang sources from the devices, if devices support this. And also, one of the exercises will be to make sure we can compile all the OpenConfig and their dependent IETF models, and basically make them available as set of extensions, ready-to-go extensions for ONOS. The second prong of this effort will be to continue working on dynamic configuration store to make sure that it provides ability to subscribe for consolidated events, because currently you can subscribe all for events, but they are not consolidated at certain desired root of the tree. They're basically, you get events for all the nodes in a tree. For any updates anywhere in a tree, you're going to get bombarded with events, which is desirable in some cases, but not in others. And also some of the effort will be directed towards making sure that we have more deterministic sharding in order to be able to optimize performance and provide locality with respect to devices and device mastership. Also, in order to handle the bidirectional, both southbound and northbound flows of information between applications that lie to the north of ONOS and devices which lie to the south, we're going to implement a device config synchronizer, which is a component that will be responsible for making sure that the devices have the configuration that they're intended to have it. And as part of this, we'll be productizing a netconf and restconf southbound adapters. Beyond that, the set of features in this area are a little bit fuzzy. Most likely, the transactional updates, capability to perform transactional updates, will probably be pushed to the end release. And that's just at high level some of the objectives for Dynamic Configuration Brigade.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. Let's move on to GUI Brigade. Stephen?
Hello. So yeah, the main goal for this sprint was to introduce the region-aware topology view to the front end. So it's been hidden for the last two sprints or so, 2 releases or so. We have finally managed to get that into the menu, and it's usable by the community. So we've added the ability to create regions and group switches and nodes within a region, and you can navigate between regions. You can define if the region you're wanting to display is either a geo, so displays a map, so that could be the US or a European map or whatever you want, or also a grid background, which would allow you to draw shapes and stuff. So you could draw a rack, for example, and plot devices within the rack. We've also introduced a traffic monitoring system, which was taken from the previous topology. So we're in the progress of slowly moving over old overlays into the current or the new region-aware topology view. So we started with the traffic monitoring for that, and added the toolbar, a basic version of the toolbar back in. Also, there was a redesign for the front end in a previous release, which was only for the light theme. So we've just added a new color palette for the dark theme and reinstated that. We also took some of the new features we added into the region-aware topology view, like the auto-scaling, zoom in and out. So that basically limits the size of a node as you zoom in. So if there's a big cluster of nodes, they don't fill up the whole screen. You can actually view them a bit easier. And then just various bug fixes and performance improvements. Do you want to go to the next slide? So for Loon release, we're looking to harden the JavaScript side mainly. So at the moment, we're loading in a few hundred JavaScript and CSS files. So we're looking to minify them all and hopefully increase page performance, load performance, and the JS parsing speed. We want to introduce Sass instead of using CSS. This will allow us to use variables and functions within our styles, so we'll be able to get a greater consistency on new features added, and also updating elements. We can use color palettes that are already defined, so people don't have to worry about trying to pick the right colors, and it will all be handled for them. We'll introduce ESLint into the pipeline, so this will allow us to define a coding standard for the JavaScript, and developers will get real-time updates whether they are following the correct guidelines or not. And then JavaScript code coverage tools. So we're going to start off by writing all the unit tests that we need to do. Well, implement the code coverage, find out where all the unit tests aren't currently available, write them, and then we're going to try and plan to get the code coverage to at least 80% by the end of this release. We will also be working on the overlay API. So currently, as I mentioned before, we're in the process of porting the same functionality from the classic Topo into Topo 2. So by the end of the sprint release, we'll have the API in place to do so. Moving on from that, on the M release, we'll just be taking all of the current overlays and putting them into the regional where. So hopefully there aren't any gaps between Classic and Topo 2 by the end of that release. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And I probably should introduce Stephen. I'm taking over as the GUI Brigade lead.
Hello.
It's interesting. Okay, moving on to gRPC. Is Aaron on? Okay, so in terms of gRPC, a lot of the focus for gRPC has been getting it ramped up. So there has been focus on getting brigade members recruited and getting things planned. The work week is still in progress and isn't expected to be in place until I think June in Korea. There is work going on to try to get the build working for gRPC, so that's being integrated. And then I think upcoming functionality, once the core services are in, the plan is to focus on specific apps and getting their northbound interfaces in place. And then build and package brigade, Viswa?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so as part of K release, we just had few items. When we planned for a complete POM obsolescence, but we had a slow start, so we were able to just push in one feature for POM obsolescence, that is like we extended bug to support embedded dependencies. And the next three items are more on experimental stage. So we experimented the code disaggregation with repo. So we'll have Zach walk us through that experience. And with respect to the Jenkins pipeline feature, so Alex is tried to fix the existing base code what Ray has written. So it looks like it's working. So there are some little gaps. So once we close that gaps, we will push it for review. And we also documented the existing Jenkins build and pipeline process. So we had a work week as part of this release, and then Ray and Brian just shared like how Jenkins is organized in ONOS project and how things are happening. So the process, I mean, we are just trying to document that in form of Gatebook and then put it out in the community to have some reviews. So these are our accomplishments for K release. Yoon, can you move to next slide? Yeah. So as part of L, we will continue the POM obsolescence. There are other issues with respect to theft, port buff, and other issues with respect to the bug. So we will work on that, and we'll try to obsolete POM completely in next release, hopefully. And so based on our experiment with repo, the plan is to come up with a proposal with respect to code disaggregation next release, and then depending upon TST's feedback, we'll start implementing that plan. And also, we will work with Ray and Brian to finalize the Jenkins process workflow documented, and then probably try to move all the freestyle jobs into pipeline-based jobs. And also, the plan is to extend that to SGC and cell warden workflows. That's on L. So once we have accomplished all the tasks for L, then the items for M is to harden repo and also start early works on recipes and package distribution formats. And we can also work on the API semantic versioning. So that's the plan for L and M. Thank you.
Thanks, Viswa. It sounds like there are a couple of demos, so we'll cover those at the end of the release planning session. Teaching Brigade?
Sure.
Okay. So, Abdulhalim? Are you on?
I don't see him in the participant list.
Yeah, I don't either. We have a couple of callers though, so I wasn't sure. Okay. There was a work week for the Teaching Brigade and the Security and Performance Brigades in Paris this last weekend. So my assumption are these are the updates from that. Yeah, so they had their working day, created some action plans. So there are recordings. The plan is to document and reorganize module 1.4. So intro to SDN, intro to ONOS, and provide slide materials and provide feedback for the wiki. So tutorials and architecture guide. And then in terms of upcoming deliverables, complete materials for the tutorials they had noted, and fix some of the existing tutorials. And then it looks like there'll be a training event during ONOS Build. So ONOS Build 2017 is in the September timeframe. So for those planning to attend, so it sounds like the Teaching Brigade will be hosting their training sessions. And then we will move on to Northbound. Is he there yet? Luca went back to Italy, so I think he said he wouldn't be able to make these sessions. Okay, so for Northbound, in the K release, there was some intent installer refactoring, new intent compiler, intent domain, as well as integration of OFDPA with a POC for ONOS in a box. And then for Northbound, so the focus will be around bandwidth reservation and enforcement using intent framework, resource service refactoring, and then registered resource service update. Security and performance analysis brigades. I don't see Stefano on either. So we'll catch him later. I think some of the significant things in Kingfisher was that there was some testing done on security, and a few security bugs were actually found. So there's been work going on between the team as well as the brigade to resolve some of these issues. So we definitely appreciate the work that the brigade is doing to uncover some of the issues that we're in the process of resolving. And then they also had a work week, so we'll see what the plans are with that brigade as we move forward. So P4 Brigade, Carmelo? Carmelo, I saw you online.
Yes, sorry, I lost the window. I didn't know how to unmute my microphone. So, so the brigade, we just started the brigade, and the goal of the brigade is to enable this new programmable data plane paradigm in ONOS, in which data plane can process packets in a protocol independent manner and also allow for reconfigurability in the field. So for the Loon release, we propose to deliver initial support for P4 runtime. P4 runtime is becoming the standard way of controlling at runtime P4 devices, and we plan to add support for this in the current ONOS southbound. I say southbound because in this release we're going to focus mainly on the southbound, and we're going to allow only for minimal extensions to northbound APIs. So the other deliverable will be the extension of the FlowReal API in order to support generic match and actions that can be defined in a P4 program. And for the M release, we target at analyzing more existing northbound APIs and see if we can extend, refactor them in order to enable protocol independence, for example, in flow objectives or intents. And then we plan to add initial support for services to add with incremental reprogramming. So how can we deploy a new P4 program to devices while traffic is flowing? And as part of the brigade effort, there's a few tasks where community can help that I've identified, and these are the implementation of a programmable packet parser in ONOS. So how can we parse a packet that we receive from a device, for example, a packet tin that has an header structure that is defined in a P4 program. And so I'm going to add a link to a Jira ticket to this. And the other task where the community might help is the implementation of the FlowReal translator. This is a crucial element in the architecture of the P4 southbound. And that's all.
Okay, thanks, Carmelo. Okay, sounds like no questions, so we'll move on to in-service software upgrade. Jordan?
Sure, so essentially this release we're starting in-service software upgrade work. This is really a lot of exploration, sort of laying the groundwork for ISSU. And so what we're trying to do is sort of work within what's already in ONOS as much as possible, which means cryo. So essentially supporting backwards compatible serialization and cryo. There's a lot of low-level work that needs to be done, subversion, like the messaging protocols to ensure that we can upgrade, make changes to those over time. And then adding a coordinator to understand which version of the software is running on different nodes at different times, and sort of doing backwards compatible serialization between nodes during communication. And so that's for the next release. And then I think for M, it's going to sort of depend on the lessons that we learn there. And some of what we've talked about is going to protobuf, but that really depends on how well cryo goes. And we might need help. So depending on what we do with serialization, we may need help from the community for cryo or protobuf. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. We'll move on to QA, Sujitra.
So for QA, for the Kingfisher deliverables, we have these following. The first one is we updated the performance white paper, and we are planning to schedule a review in this week and update the performance numbers with the final RC build. And plan is to release this white paper in the next the coming 2 weeks. Hopefully we can do that. And we also added a new test to pull the Docker images for all the released versions of ONOS and test it. And we also created OpenFlow 1.5, and then we investigated what are the new features when compared from 1.3 to 1.5, and then created a document. And what we plan to do is if there are any new enhancements which are going into ONOS as part of OF 1.5, then we plan to add them. And this is like a base list that we keep it. And then we keep updating the document as we go forward. And we also added some couple of tests on the new, some of the enhancements that went into the bandwidth allocation feature. And we also made some improvements for various tests like intent tests, netconfig, netcfg, and some BGPLS tests. Basically, some of the improvements is the way there was some reporting errors that we had before. We corrected those. And we also made some improvements in the stability of this test. So right now they are running fine, and then we have the accurate results for these tests. So these are the for the Kingfisher deliverables. Next slide, please. For the ELF, we have identified few features, and we plan to have some new test cases for the ISSU test in case we have any new functionality added and we are able to add some tests. Then we are planning to add some new tests around that area for that feature. And we also plan to debug some network partitioning tests, and then and also correct them and enhance some of the tests in the network partitioning area. And we plan to refactor the packet optical tests. We have lately noticed that many of the optical tests have been failing, so we need to investigate them, and also we might need to refactor because of the changes that went into the optical packet optical feature. So we plan to do that as part of the L release. And also there are we have during the course of testings, the test cases, I mean like the execution of the test, we have identified few areas in test-on where we plan to refactor the code for test-on so that we have a better stability of the existing test cases. We want to realign some of the tests and also make sure that all of the tests have the same startup procedure and the configuration, the way we are setting up the configurations on the test cases. So we plan to do that as part of L release. And also another one was we had this for a while. We wanted to add some new tests around resource manager. So we plan to do that. And for the extended release for the M, we have identified so there are some new readout intent tests with OpenFlow. We plan to add those. And also we wanted to add some topology change throughput measurements as part of some southbound enhancements. And regarding the areas from the community, what we request is we wanted to get more help from the community to add more tests into the work that grows into the brigades. Currently, we have very few tests as part of the brigade, so we would like to get help from the community so we could add more tests to the brigades and catch up the features, functionality that are going into the brigades. And also, we are planning to get help for the security tests, and we are basically talking with the security and performance brigade to get some help on the security tests. On the Delta test, we have integrated into ONOS, and there are many failures with the current test. So we plan to get help from the security brigade regarding the security tests. So that's all for QA.
Okay, thanks, Suchitra. Packet optical, I think Yuta, you're going to cover this.
Sure. So Kingfish release was mostly about dealing with technical depth and so on. So new feature sort of developer was open ROADM, experiment support using the dynamic config subsystem, and others were the finalizing the protection behavior and so on. And one thing we explored was OpenFlow 1.4 support. That was, they were using the current generation of Loxygen. Then the next, could you go to the next slide? For the LEDs and data deliverable, it's sort of gonna depend on what entity development would want. So the priority and so on is likely to be shuffled, but these are the things we are thinking right now. And one is multi-layer intent tracking, where intent depends on other intents and so on. We would like to sort of incorporate that into the intent framework. And another is we will need a subsystem to track physical parameter like power level and so on. So we would like to start designing that in the release and hopefully develop that with collaboration with the external collaborator in the release. The next item technically doesn't really belong to Packet Optical, but the current slide is sort of organized in this way, and there was no place for this OpenFlow extension to go in, so I just put it there. But this is mainly a contribution from Rad from Argela and Jimmy from Uplink that we would like to bump Loxy to a version which support OpenFlow 1.5 and extend flow subsystem and so on to benefit from OpenFlow 1.5 features. That is something they are trying to work on toward LEDs and so on. And for the community help, I guess we would like to have some more data point to which can host production deployment of a packet optical thingies, and we'd like to explain more about the streaming telemetry. Since the optical network tend to generate large amount of data, this could be something interesting to explore, implementing power balancing application and so on. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Yuta. And then I believe OpenStack is going to be more of an afternoon thing. Actually, I think Yoonseon said she wouldn't be able to, or Hyunsun said she wouldn't be able to make it. But we can cover this more in the afternoon. And then this subsystem, I believe that was the same case. Jin is in Paris, but we can cover it more in the afternoon. And then I don't believe Aihua is on, but I think Chani is on. Chani? I guess Chani, I see Chani on, but Chani, are you on mute? Okay, we may have to cover this one in the afternoon. I'll see if I can ping him. So in terms of L Sprint 1, it'll start on Monday at 3 p.m. So we have a sprint meeting planning session at a time. Technically, the sprint doesn't end until end of day tomorrow. So my plan is to close out the Jira sprints then and create new sprints so that new stories can be added for the planning session on June 5th. And then demos, we have 3, so I will stop sharing and then have Stephen take over.
I don't know what I need to press to do that.
Let me stop sharing and then I'll make you a presenter.
Okay.
Just below the mic button, we have the share button.
Oh, so I need to download something. Hold on. Right. Is that working?
Yes.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. So I'll start off just to show you that we have now got topology 2 in the menu, but this is currently the classic topo. So the original functionality for traffic overlays is here. So we can, at the moment, we are pinging host 1 over here to host 6, and it's displaying the per second, I think. So yeah, that's the original functionality on the classic topo. So we've started to put that back over to the region aware topology view. So at the moment, we're still pinging host 1, which is in region A, and we're pinging host 6 in region C. So we can see that the traffic is flowing between the regions. So the route it's taking is host 1 is hitting switch 1. Something we do need to add is that, so switch has a connection to a switch within region B, but we're not currently rendering out the link. We are currently working on that at the moment. But if you could see that, there would be a line between here with the speed going into region B. But if we come into C, we will then be able to see switch 6 is hitting host 6. So yeah, we've started to port the traffic monitoring over to the region aware. And that was the demo we had for you. So these regions are defined by a shell script and Mininet. Mininet is doing the traffic simulation. And yeah, so any questions?
Thanks, Zach. I think we're good here. So next demo is from Zach. So let me make Zach a presenter.
Okay, can you guys see me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I've been working on as part of the build brigade is supporting a repo to manage the source tree. Currently, what we have is we have a manifest set up, and the manifest is basically a list of other repos that can be downloaded and managed as a set. Currently, the only thing in the manifest is the ONOS repo, which we've talked to the TST about getting the ability to create additional repos, and that would let me create other things and a more unified set of repositories that can be checked out of the set. But what this really does is it works in closely with Garrett to allow you to manage your code, and it replaces in a lot of cases the Git review tool. So if you want to start with repo, you can run a command to repo init, which will download a manifest, which basically is a list of the different Git repos that you have. So now that I've created a manifest, I'm going to sync it. It's going to download ONOS. Sees all the patches. With the status, tells you that everything's clean. And then if you go into ONOS directory, all your standard Git commands work, so you can see everything's there. If you want to start a new branch, it's repo start. You're now on that branch. You can touch something. And You'll see that you're on that. You're off. You have one commit ahead of master. You can do things like repo sync, which will go out and make sure that you have most recent changes. And you can then, if you want to upload to Garrett, you do repo upload. And this is to do it as a draft, and to upload it, the -t is to upload it with the name of the branch. This is going to fail because I don't have my SSH creds. But it would fail. But if it did succeed, you'd see something that looks like this. And I'm not signed in. And actually this isn't the one, but I would have showed you a commit that I made that went through the repo process. So it does that. It also makes it much easier to manage sets of changes, and also the interaction on the command line is superior to what you're used to with Git review. Does anyone have any questions about this? Okay, then.
Thanks, Zach. And then our final demo is Viswa on buck embedded dependencies.
Yeah.
Okay, so I changed the presenter to Viswa.
Okay, I think I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, are you able to view my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just a small feature that we added recently. So if at all you want to bundle your dependencies along with your ONOS OSGA jar, then by default there was no capability in Buck to actually bundle your dependencies along with your ONOS jar. So we just added that. So I'll just take this example of events app. So by default you don't have anything. So let's just try to remove this. So the way in which you add an external dependency is through a new directive called embedded dependencies, wherein assume that I want to package this prod buff jar along with my events.oar, then I just have to add this as part of this embedded dependencies, and you can add more than one dependencies if you want, and then you could add dependencies from the actual path. So if we have something like third-party libs, then you can just add along that path as well. So we just save this, and then we'll just force Buck to recompile the change, decompile the Java file by just introducing a change.
Okay, I got it. Instead of primitive, we have to use blob. Now you are getting error in creating green
and we just build it.
There you are giving some strategy. You are giving primitive strategy will be useful for creating Java strings. Now we are giving object. So instead of primitive, you have to give blob. Okay. We gave blob, right? Then what is it? Because we give blob is strategy.
So the events app is getting built. I think it's done already. Let's just check. Yep. So if you just cut open this one, so just get inside the OSGA part, jar and except. So here you have the lib package, the dependencies package along with your OSGA jar. So this is the new feature that was added as part of this key release. So that's it.
Okay, thanks, Viswa. I think that's it for our release planning for today. Any questions? If not, I think we're good. I'll stop the recording and then I'll see folks in the afternoon session. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.